Hello, everybody. Welcome to our March Madness. I'm so excited about this. The last time we had this was last year in March, and Matt Osborne, my wonderful husband, he talked about motivation, and this year he's going to be talking about momentum. So if you guys read the post, you saw that he has been in the Army for 20 years. He was a first sergeant. He is a John Maxwell leadership coach with more than 20 years of experience, and he's just amazing at all kinds of leadership. So I'm going to turn it over to him so that he can talk about some great things that he has developed on his own with this 20 years of experience. And he's going to share with us some really good stuff. So I hope you guys brought your pens and your notebooks to learn some great stuff. And here we are.
Awesome. Well, I'm very privileged to be here tonight to speak to all of you and to pour into you a little bit. This is my passion. Most of you know me already. I keep looking over here because that's where the picture's at, but need to be looking. So anyway, all that to say that, in 22, 23 years of experience, both in the military and out of the military, working with industry, one of the things that I've learned, and this is when we were talking about, well, what do you want to talk about this year? Last year, it was all about motivation. Well, this year I want to talk to the momentum aspect, because we hear so much about momentum when we're talking about being entrepreneurs and leading teams and leading ourselves, really, quite frankly. What drives you to get out of bed in the morning? Something requires that. Well, part of the momentum piece was that motivation. And I said to Rochelle, I said, I think that it's important for folks to understand what momentum is, because we hear it so much. You're a small business owner, you're plugging away at it every day, and you hear about people talking about, well, my team's in momentum, or my team's not in momentum, or how do I get into momentum? What's this momentum thing? You go to the Barnes and Noble or to the library, and there's books upon books upon books that talk about momentum. And so the problem is that you can spend a lifetime studying momentum, but somebody else has already done the work for you, so there's no need to. I love teaching this area specifically as a leader. When I'm doing leader development, it's a lot about momentum, and it's really a straightforward logic to it. So what I want to talk to you about tonight, because I love to talk, as most of you know, is first and foremost understanding what is momentum really. Like, let's go ahead and just dispel the rumors, and let's go ahead and just demystify this thing called momentum and help you understand what it really is. And then what I want to talk to you is kind of the components of momentum. And then finally, as long as time permits, I want to talk to you about what is the leader's responsibility. Each one of you has a team or is working on putting together a team. So each one of you will have, at some point in time, the leadership responsibility for the momentum for your team. And as long as you understand what your responsibilities are, you're going to be able to navigate your team through the ups and downs of momentum. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first piece. So let's talk first about what momentum really is, right? So momentum, bottom line, momentum at its root is motion. It requires motion to get started, and it produces motion as a byproduct. So it's all about motion. So if you don't get out of bed in the morning, you're not going to have the momentum to do all the things that are on your to-do list for the day. And at the end of the day, you'll find yourself going, wow, that was a really unproductive day, right? The first step is you've got to get out of bed. You got to put action. You got to put motion into it. So motion, okay, so here's the thing about motion. Okay, so I want you to think about, as we talk through this, think about like a train sitting still on the train tracks. There's no motion to it. In order for motion to start, there's got to be friction where the train wheel meets the track. There has to be that resistance of the train wheel spinning on the track to get the forward motion going. That friction is key. Without friction, there cannot be momentum. So why do I share that with you? Why is that? That piece right there is probably the piece that steals most leadership, steals away their ability to generate true momentum, because they spend their whole time trying to prevent their team from having friction. When in reality, friction is what you need. Friction is the idea that I either possess what I need to get going. There's enough coal being shoveled into the train. There's enough force being generated to get that friction going, or I have to do some personal growth. I start to look and I say, okay, well, why can't I get the friction going that I need to get going for my team so that we can get into momentum? What's missing? How do I make that happen? What areas do I need to be focused on as a leader? Where are some areas that my team needs to be focused on? What are some themes or some things that I'm seeing in my team that tell me that that's where my inability to get friction going is coming from, right? And that friction is key. So if you find yourself today in a position where your team can't even get into momentum, then I would challenge you to go back to and look for those areas that you need. What are you avoiding? What conversations are you avoiding as a leader with your team or with other people? With yourself? Look in the mirror. What conversations am I avoiding? Right? Ask yourself those hard questions. Where's the personal growth and professional growth opportunities? What do I not know that I need to know that's going to make my team better and help them grow? You know, John Maxwell says it best. He says, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't grow till you know. So you better get going.
Mm-hmm.
So take that opportunity to figure that out. That friction is key. Now, that friction is going to generate one of two important things. It's going to generate traction, which is what we want. Traction means that I embrace friction. I recognize it as a key component to getting into momentum. Without friction, there is no momentum. So when I have traction, it means that myself and my team, usually your team will embrace it if you embrace it. If your team doesn't embrace it, chances are you need to have a conversation with the person in the mirror, because they will mimic what you do as the leader of your team. So traction is what we're going for. You know, if we acknowledge the growth that needs to happen to generate that friction and the growth that needs to happen within ourselves and within our teams, then you will gain traction. And that, you know, we're going to talk a little bit later about this, but that means too, it's not like one of those things where the train gets going and we're like, oh, hey, let's throw our hands up and walk back to the food cart, you know, or the food car and take it easy. It doesn't work like that. You got to continue to navigate that train, so to speak, for your team. Okay? Because you've got to look, there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be hiccups in the track, and you want to make sure that the train continues on with that good forward momentum. Okay? So traction is the positive embracing of friction. Friction being where does your team need to grow? Where are the opportunities you need to embrace to get the train moving, to get that momentum train going? Okay? Now, on the negative side of this, and this is where a lot of people find themselves, unfortunately. On the negative side of this, we have this thing called resistance. So when the friction gets going, we resist it. Change is ugly. Change is messy. People are messy. Teams are messy. Being a leader can be messy. And we don't embrace the byproducts of that friction. And we resist it. And what we do in creating that resistance is we actually slow any forward momentum we would have gained. So we find ourselves going, well, never mind. And here goes the train's moving. Never mind. Wait, are we rolling backwards right now? What's going on here? That's resistance. Okay? So we want to make sure that, you know, we understand that. And so I'll run this back by you, and I'll throw a slide into the chat later on afterwards that kind of shows this breakdown. But so momentum is motion that creates more motion. You have to have friction to get into momentum. So go ahead and embrace that now. If you haven't embraced this notion that friction is a requirement of momentum, I'm challenging you today to embrace it. Friction will create traction when you embrace that friction as something that's necessary and healthy and much needed. Or it will generate resistance when you say, I don't like change. I don't like being uncomfortable. I don't like growth. Then you will have resistance, and you will find your team stagnating, and you will have a hard time doing anything productive with this thing that you have, your purpose, your dream, your passion. You will have a hard time bringing any of that into fruition. So that's the big piece I want to talk to you about there. Now, what I want to jump into, so we understand now that, you know, kind of what is required to get momentum going and how we can kind of stifle that. But, you know, as a leader, as an entrepreneur leading your own team, you have three fundamental responsibilities as they pertain to this thing called momentum, right? The first is, this is a tough one. Now, these are things that a leader has to do. You can't put this off on anybody else. You signed up for this when you signed up to take on a team and start building your team and building your dream and helping people build their dreams. So this is important. The first, it's your job to create your team's momentum. I'm going to say that again. It's your job to create your team's momentum. The speed, you're going to hear this a lot, the speed of the leader dictates the speed of the team. If you can't generate momentum, don't expect them to generate momentum. Okay. Now that sometimes you get a fluke and maybe you have a really hard charger in there somewhere and they are able to generate their own momentum, but you will become their lid at some point. You will become the very resistance that steals away their traction of their own business momentum if you're not careful. All right. Number 2, you have to take existing momentum and grow it. It's not enough to generate momentum. Everybody gets excited when they start this business. They're like, yeah, I got 6 people, I got 7 people, I got 8 people, I got 20 people joining my team. This is amazing. My team's in momentum. And they sit back and they say, look how good I am. My team is on a glide path to success. And then they wake up one morning, they look at their back office and they see this thing called attrition. And they say, what just happened? What's going on about momentum? Well, you got comfortable. And you thought that momentum will sustain itself. Well, it's like anything else. If you don't cultivate it and feed it and water it and pay attention to it, it will die off. Momentum is no different. Okay? So it's your job as a leader to recognize, or rather to create the momentum for your team and then to continue to grow it. Where do new opportunities exist? Where are new friction points that we can address and continue to push and propel our momentum forward? I'm big on asking questions. I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you tonight. Anybody who knows me, I'm a coach. This is what I do. I'm going to throw questions at you. None of this is proprietary. I give you full permission to take these questions, write them down, and ask your team the same questions, because that's what we do. If you're not in this to grow other leaders, well, ask yourself what you're really doing it for, because that's my passion. I love growing other leaders. So the third point here is that as important it is to take existing momentum and grow it, you need to be aware of the warning signs when momentum is starting to dwindle. What are the warning signs? So that and then when that happens, right, as a leader, if somebody asked me a long time ago, they said, how would you define the biggest responsibility of a leader? And I said, well, that's easy. The biggest responsibility of a leader is to model success. Now, that could be anything you want. But whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it's sell a product, provide a service, lead a military team into combat, whatever it is, you've got to model that success for them. And that can't be done if you're not paying attention to what's changing around you. So you've got to keep your finger on the proverbial pulse of your team's momentum and say, something's not right here. Right? And then once you recognize that, you've got to model those U-turn behaviors. Hey, team, I'm recognizing these trends. I think this is stealing some of our momentum away. And this is how I think that we need to change that trajectory so we can keep this forward momentum. Let's have a good conversation about this, and let's talk about it, and let's grow as a team. That's the beauty of leadership and the beauty of having your own team, right? So, as a leader, you need to understand and apply those 3 responsibilities so that you can bring about these amazing momentum results, right? So momentum is important because momentum magnifies success. When you are in momentum, little successes become big successes. You know what I'm talking about? When your team's in momentum and Sally gets a join and Sue gets a join and Johnny gets a join, those are little successes, but the team magnifies those successes because they're in momentum. And we're all excited, and we're all celebrating, and we're all amped up, and we all want to get joins. And it's amazing how that feeds off of each other. Momentum magnifies success, and it allows you to create more overall success for the team. The other thing I love about momentum is that when a team is in momentum, obstacles get smaller. Mm-hmm. Think about the train. A train on a track moving at 60 miles an hour will pile through just about anything in its path. It's a force to be reckoned with at that speed. That train is in momentum, and the obstacle in its path is not, think about how many times you see a car versus a train or a brick wall, anything, the train's going to plow right through it. But take the same train at a standstill and put a little block wedge on the front tire, or the front wheel rather, and guess what happens? Can't move. Train never gets into momentum. So when you're in momentum, little obstacles get reduced to nothing, really. Think about it. When you're all amped up and excited, you're not thinking about, oh man, it's been a tough day. No, you're excited. You're amped up. You're pumped up. The team's pumped up, and we're all feeding off of that positive vibe, and we're moving forward. The team's moving forward. So it's important that when we're in momentum, we recognize problems and obstacles are going to get smaller. We want to stay in momentum because we don't want to be that train at a standstill and somebody just pops that little block in there and derails any hope of getting back into momentum. Momentum energizes. Bottom line up front, everybody wants to be on a winning team. How many of you woke up today and raised your hand and said, I want to be on the worst possible team in Plexus that I can find? Please show me who they are because I want to be on that team. The reality, I can't see all your faces, but the reality is that none of us said that because it's in our nature. We've been instilled with a passion to be successful, to do amazing things.
And we are on the best team. I'm just saying.
I'm not going to argue that point. For more than one reason. But yes, I mean, you want to be on the winning team. Everybody wants to be on the winning team. When you're in momentum, it just energizes everybody because you're on the winning team. It's amazing to see a team in momentum. It's a really, really, really awesome sight to see a team that is rallying, that is in momentum. Momentum enhances performance. People are willing to take chances. Think about it. When you're in momentum and there's a lot of positive energy and everybody's just success after success, people are willing to take chances. When your team is growing and things are going well, you might reach out and say, you know what? I have been delaying this conversation with this person long enough. I know this person needs this opportunity. I know they need these products. I'm just so energized right now by all the growth I'm seeing on my team and the momentum. I'm going to reach out to them. You're going to take more chances, and that's going to create more momentum.
Yep.
Because it's personal growth opportunities. So, and then finally, momentum makes change easier. When you're moving, so think about it. When is it easier to change course of direction? When you're at a standstill or when you're moving forward? The answer is that when you're moving forward. When I'm moving forward, it's easier for me to change the course of a direction than if I'm at a complete standstill. It requires more energy to change direction. So you want to make sure that you understand these key factors. So the 3 fundamental responsibilities of you as a leader, I'm going to hit them up one more time. You have to create the momentum for your team, period. It is not your downline's responsibility to create momentum for your team. It is your job to create that, to model that. Number 2, you have to be able to take the existing momentum and not rest on your laurels. You have to be able to take it and grow it, assess it every day. Put your finger on the pulse of your team's momentum. How are we doing today? Is anything changing? If it's not changing for the better, what is changing? Because we need to address that very quickly so we don't have a constant friction that's bringing that down because we're resisting it, right? So we want to address that. And finally, the third thing is, we have to recognize when that momentum is slipping and model what we call the U-turn behaviors. You have to model for your team how to get back into momentum. You don't want to ever fall out of momentum, but the reality is that most teams, it's hard to sustain what we call the operational tempo of a team in momentum. We're not designed like that. So what tends to happen is we have these peaks and valleys, right, of momentum. And that's okay, because guess what a valley is? I'm going to give you a valley is a time of growth. If you change your leadership perspective about what a valley presents to you, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to explode your influence with your team because they're going to go, how do you do it? It's amazing. The reality is this. In momentum, peaks and valleys. In the valleys, you're asking yourself, what's changing? What do I need to address? What friction points am I avoiding so that I can turn those friction points from resistance into traction? And then guess what? You're going to be right back into momentum again. Okay? But obviously, you want to capture those valleys sooner versus later. Because I don't want to come to a complete standstill. How many of you want to build a team of 20, 30, 1,000, and then wake up tomorrow and they're gone? And you're like, oh, yes, I can't wait to rebuild again. It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard.
But the reality is that it can be done. But it's a lot easier if you say, oop, I lost a couple. What's changing on my team? Oop, these people are not as active as they have been. What's changing on my team? Those are indicators. Learn to look for indicators that momentum is changing. All right. Rochelle, you're my timekeeper.
Okay.
All right. So how do we do that, right? So what are the indicators that momentum may be slipping? I'm going to throw you a couple because I want to get to this last point before we run out of time and give you guys a chance to ask some questions. But so here's some key things, right? So I said you got to keep your finger on the pulse of your team. These are things you want to look for. An attitude shift. Has something changed in the attitude of an individual or in the team as a whole? This is, sometimes it's very subtle. And sometimes it's bright as day, like right in your face, like, okay, what just happened there? This person is usually very sweet, very engaging in the team conversations. They're very attentive. They're posting every day. They're doing their IPA. They're bumping other people's chats. And now there's nothing there. Like, what just happened? Cold turkey. You should be asking yourself that question. You should be reaching out to them. Hey, how's it going? What's changed? I noticed that you're not posting today. Is everything okay? You know, because you want to reach out to them and before, you know, don't wait till the end of the month and say, oh, they didn't order this month. I should probably reach out to them. That's disingenuous at that point. Okay? I mean, if these are people who are momentum, like when we're talking about momentum, these are people who are actively working your team, and then they fall off the face of the earth at the beginning of the month, and you don't bother to follow up with them until the end of the month to say what's changed, that's disingenuous. You're going to lose influence with them. You're going to lose the ability to help get them and navigate with them back to momentum. All right, so attitude shift. Number 2, individual entitlement. When a team shifts to a mentality of it's me over the team, it's all about me, you got to be careful there. You want to make sure that, you know, we are a team. You know, you do have a team. So it's very easy. Some people come at this, especially you want to consider personality types. Okay, I'm a red, green, so I'll admit that up front. I'm a red. We tend to sometimes shift to the me because the me drives the us. You know, and so if I can get me right, us is going to follow, right? That's the mentality. But we want to look for those individual entitlements. Entitlement is okay. We do want to do things because we each have a purpose, a passion, a reason why we embarked on entrepreneurship. But we don't place that so high that we neglect the rest of the team's needs as well, right? So it's a balancing act. I tell everybody, you're going to hear that word balance. That's a whole nother teaching block. But but you want to pay attention to that. And when individual entitlement becomes prevalent across the team, then you don't really have a team anymore. You have a bunch of individuals. And that's dangerous. That will destroy momentum. Because it's like, instead of everybody working together to propel in the same direction, everybody's going, no, I'm going that way, and I'm going this way, and I'm going to go that way, and nobody's working together anymore. You know, it's the cumulative success is better than the individual success any day. So number 3, preoccupation with the past.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
That is the truth. Who said that?
No.
Anyway, preoccupation with the past. So the easiest indicator I see a lot of times is people say, well, you know, 6 months ago we were doing this so well. And they want to harp on what were we doing 6 months ago? Why was 6 months differently? You know, well, why don't we go back to what we were doing 6 months ago? You know, and we start to get this preoccupation with the past instead of saying the past is good for one thing: assess, learn, and move on. If you dwell in the past, that's where, think about it, it's the past for a reason. Okay, that story's been written. We're trying to write the story into the future. So assess the past, understand if something's changed, but move to the future. That's where momentum's happening. It's not happening in the past.
You can't start the next chapter if you keep rereading the past chapters.
Truth. Diminishing passion on the team, that goes without saying. When your team's passion starts to dwindle, you need to be assessing very quickly what's going on, because something has changed in the dynamic of the team, and that will steal momentum away. We talk about status quo mentality. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm happy where I'm at. Now, if everybody was happy where they were at as silvers, we'd have a great team full of silvers, but that's all we would have, right? That's where you have to get back to their goals. You have to get back to the passion. Why did you want to do this in the beginning? Okay, you said it was about the money. Maybe we need to investigate that a little bit more. What's the money going to do for you and your family? What's really at the heart of your passion? Because I promise you, where passion exists, opportunity, well, we're going to talk about these in a second, but where passion exists, all these other variables are going to come into alignment very quickly. All right, and then finally, delayed decision-making. Remember when I told you that when you're on a winning team and everything's in momentum, people are willing to take chances? Well, guess what happens in the opposite? Everybody recoils in. They want to protect what they have, and they're afraid to make decisions, and they start to distrust. Well, you know, what does she know about this? Or what does he know about that? You know, and what if I reach out to that person? You know, maybe when everything was going good, I was brave and I was reaching out to these people that even though I was afraid of objections from them, I was reaching out to them anyway because we were in momentum and everybody was excited and I was encouraged and I believed I could do it. Well, the opposite happens when your team is falling out of momentum. They start to recoil into themselves. It's almost like a protective mechanism that the brain does. And it says, fear of failure, fear of rejection, limiting self-beliefs, we call those cognitive distortions. There's a whole list of them, right? All those things rear their ugly heads. And it's this downward spiral. All right. So, when we recognize these early indicators, we can take immediate actions, and we understand that you want to be really careful, so one of the easiest things you can do, and a lot of people do it well when you're falling out of momentum, is they want to celebrate successes, right? We want momentum. When you're celebrating successes, everybody gets energized around it. And you want to celebrate successes, right? I'm going to say this again. You want to celebrate successes. But what happens a lot of times is people want to celebrate starts. Like, oh, I got 3/4 of my IPA done today. And you pat themselves on the back. Hey, listen, don't get me wrong. We all have rough days, and some days that pat on the back is well-deserved. I get it. Trust me. Father of 7, juggling a lot of responsibilities as well. I totally understand some days that pat is absolutely deserved. But we don't want to celebrate on a regular basis those starts. We want to celebrate the successful finishes. I got the silver. I got the joins. I did this. I did that. I had a whole list of people to reach out to today, and I got through all of them. You know, I wanted to follow up with these people. I wanted to have that one difficult conversation I've been avoiding on my Franks list that I knew that I just needed to talk to, but they're so daggone smart, and I have such a hard time arguing their objections. So I didn't have that conversation. But today I had that conversation. That's good. That's a finish. Celebrate the finishes. All right. I told you I like to talk. All right. So the last thing I want to talk to you about real quick. So we talked about how momentum works, and we talked about what your leader responsibilities are with momentum and how to recognize some of those warning or indicator signs. The last thing I want to talk to you about really is the secret sauce of momentum. When you understand these 3 things, you can automatically assess what's going on with your momentum and get that train moving again automatically. So momentum really consists of 3 things coming together to form momentum. And really what they do is they come together to form performance or action. And that action is what generates momentum. Again, I told you, momentum is motion. Motion is action. You cannot get into momentum without action. I'm sorry to say. If you can read all the books you want in the world. Listen, I got a library behind me. I love to read. All the books in the world do nothing for you if you do not take what you're learning. All the videos you watch, all the people you talk to, it does nothing for you in terms of momentum if you don't take it and turn it into motion. Okay? So motion is the performance, right? So we're going to talk about the performance piece. So performance is a byproduct of 3 things coming together. They determine your level of performance. Your level of performance determines how well you get into momentum and how healthy that momentum is in terms of sustaining, right? So the 3 things are this. The first is ability. Each one of you has been blessed with or has cultivated an amazing set of knowledge, skills, talents, and gifts. Some you're born with, some you've cultivated. That's awesome. If you have not done a skills inventory, meaning you've sat down and you said, these are the things I do really well intrinsically, naturally. These are the things, and if you don't know how to do it, reach out to people that you trust and say, hey, listen, if you were to tell me 5 things that I do really well, what are they? Like, let's boil that down. What are 5 things I do really well? Be vulnerable. If you don't know how to answer the question yourself, be vulnerable. And then I would challenge you that even when you think you have the answers, be vulnerable anyway. Because people see different things in you than you see in yourself. Okay? We like to put ourselves on a pedestal. I am a great public speaker. No, you are terrible. Okay? But you know, we put ourselves on a pedestal sometimes. So get that feedback. Do a skills inventory. You know, what are you good at? What do you know? You know, I know a lot about health and fitness, and I know a lot about motivation and leadership. I know a lot about how to research and find information. I know a lot about how to take people who are running in 90 different directions and bring them together as a cohesive element and move forward. Okay, what are you good at? If you don't understand what your abilities are, you're missing a piece of the equation.
Strength finder.
So, right, there's strength finder. There's, personality tests. You should know as much about you as you possibly can. If you don't know everything you think you need to know about yourself, you need to be digging every day. And that just goes without saying. As soon as you think you know everything about yourself, go back and dig some more. You'll find something else out. It's just the way it works. It's the greatest CEOs in the world every day ask themselves, what am I going to learn today that I don't know? What do I need to know? What random thing? They don't go to bed at night unless they've learned something new about themselves, or so they've gained some new knowledge, some new insight, a new ability or talent. They just don't do it. And that's what makes them great. If you want to be a great leader, you got to know yourself first. So what are you good at? You got to know your abilities, okay? Some things you're intrinsically good at. We're naturally gifted. Some people are good speakers. Some people are good motivators. Some people are good connectors or recruiters. We all have things we're naturally good at. That's important to understand. Those things are going to make it easier to get into momentum when you align the other variables of this equation with those abilities. Now, sometimes we also have to realize where our limitations may be holding us back. What if I told you in this business that I'm a terrible recruiter? Well, suddenly we've got a disconnect, because this opportunity requires that I am good at finding people, influencing them, sharing with them, and eventually, bringing them over to join my team. If I can't do that, I'm not going to be very successful at this. So I'm going to need to cultivate that ability to be successful. So that's why that abilities inventory is so important. Make sure you take time to do that. That's part one of the equation. The next part, opportunity. I love this part when it comes to Plexus. This is the easiest conversation I have with Plexus people, and I get a lot of them. This is the easiest conversation I have with them. Opportunity. Guess what? It's already done for you. This would be like going in there and they say you're going to take a test, but this whole section of the test is already done for you. Plexus has created the opportunity. They've hyped it up. They've marketed it. They've created the product. They've done the research and development. They've done the supply chain discipline. They've done it all. You just got to connect people to that opportunity with your abilities. So that piece of the equation is figured out for you. You just got to take time to know what that looks like. What does this opportunity really look like? What's Plexus really done? What marketing materials have they created? What things, what product information is available? What business information is available? What conferences, conventions, training is available? How many of you spend at least, an hour a week in your back office exploring, checking things out, watching videos? You're not going to understand the opportunity if you don't spend time trying to understand it. It's not going to fall in your lap. Mm-hmm. So first part of the equation was ability. That part you got to work on. Some things you got, some things you're going to work on. It happens. Welcome to personal growth and professional development. It's a big part of what we do as entrepreneurs. The second part is opportunity. Good news story. It's already been done for you. Check that block. Cha-ching. Just go explore it so you know what it is. The final piece is motivation. I could spend another hour talking to you about motivation, but I won't.
You can go back and watch the video from last year on that.
That is true. Right? That is true. So I'll hit it up real quick. So here's a short, simple, sweet version of motivation, right? So motivation is key, and there's a formula for motivation. It simply goes this. Motivation is when your expectancy and your values align in such a way. So expectancy means that if I do what I need to do, I'm going to get what they say I'm going to get. If Plexus says you get 3 people to join, you're going to be a silver. Do I expect them to honor that? Sure. If Matt said if you get 3 people, I'm going to give you $1 million. Do you expect Matt to do that? I hope you're shaking your head no, because I don't have $1 million to give each of you. Okay, that's awesome. I wish I did, but I don't. Your expectancy has to be high. Well, Plexus has done a very good job with their compensation plan of explaining and proving time and time again that they're going to give you what they say they're going to give you if you do the things that they've laid out for you to do. So there's a high expectancy. Now, values. Plexus is a company of value. They have morals. Mm-hmm. Their leadership has morals. The company has structured itself to be open and honest with integrity. They're not like a lot of network marketing companies that are hiding what their true intentions are with their compensation plan, or they've created a ladder hierarchical approach that means I've got to cut people to get to the top. Mm-hmm. They haven't done that, and that's great. They're being very transparent. So when your expectancy is high and this opportunity aligns to your values in such a way that it's very high, you have a really good start for motivation. Here's why. Expectancy and values have to be high so that they can offset the negatives, which are impulsiveness and delay. Impulsiveness tells me how likely am I to be swayed by what's going on. So if I sit down at the computer and I'm doing my IPA and my phone vibrates and I pick it up and I spend 30 minutes looking at cat videos on Facebook, well, I have a very high impulsiveness level. But what that really tells me is that there's a misalignment in my motivation for this opportunity. Because if I was truly passionate, my motivation would be high because I have a high expectancy and high values. I'm not going to get waylaid by cat videos. I'm not going to be impulsive, because impulsiveness is really about how easily do I allow interruptions and obstacles and distractions to take me away from what I need to be doing, what I know I need to be doing, right? So if impulsiveness is high, that's dangerous for motivation. And finally, delay. Delay is like when you were in school and you knew that you get a syllabus in college and they tell you, hey, look, In 9 weeks, you're going to take an exam, and it's going to cover all these chapters. You knew on day one what was going to be on the exam. But what do? You wait till day 2 before the exam, right? 2 days out from the exam, and you cram. That's called delay. That's a sign that you're not really motivated. Okay. So if you delay doing your IPA, or let's do this. If you delay reaching out to people that you know you should have been reaching out to all month, and you wait until the end of the month because now it's an emergency, you need to go back and reinvestigate your motivation. Okay. Because if your delay is high, again, that's an indicator that something's wrong with your level of expectancy or your level of values. Do you value what this opportunity is for you? Do you believe in what the company's doing? Do you believe in the products? If not, you got a value issue. Do you believe that Plexus is going to do and give you what they say they're going to do and give you when you reach the landmarks, goals, promotions, convention contests, whatever it is? Do you believe that? If the answer is yes, then that's a plus. If the answer is yes for values, that's a plus. But I will challenge you that when you're the honest broker, if there's a misalignment, if impulsive is high or delay is high, there's something else going on with your motivation that you're not being honest with yourself about. And that's where good leaders help those folks navigate those waters. Where are you not being honest? What's really going on? Let's go back to your passion, purpose, whatever you want to, your why, whatever you want to call it. Let's go back and investigate that. Let's get the emotional attachment, because passion is emotion, raw, plain, and simple. If I read your purpose statement, or you read your purpose statement to me, and it sounds like, I want to have $1,000 extra income a month, and you read it to me like that, as a coach, I'm going to pick you apart. Most of you know that if you've ever coached with me. I'm going to pick you apart because it lacks conviction. It lacks passion. Go back to their purpose and find that passion. If the passion isn't there, you dig and you keep on digging until the passion bubbles to the surface. Because when it bubbles to the surface, it's like that geyser off of Beverly Hillbillies. Old show, sorry. But, when it shoots up out of the ground, it's going to be hard to put a lid back on it because that passion is so much pressure behind it, right? All right. So we talked a lot about momentum tonight. Obviously, I'm passionate about it. So the key here is to understand that it's your responsibility to create it. You need to know what it looks like, what's required, how to create it, and then how to assess it for yourself and for your team when it starts to go awry. If you can do those things, I'm here to tell you right now, I can take somebody who's never been a leader before, but if I can get them to understand this fundamental concept, and as well as another one called influence, they're unstoppable. And I did it for 20 years in the military. Some of you know that, some of you don't. But I'm telling you right now, it can be done. So even the most harsh, unyielding individual on your team today, and each one of you have that person, if you were to stop and think about it, and you think, I just can't get them to get motivated. I just can't get momentum going with them. I challenge you that if you can help connect the dots in this way tonight, they will be a force to be reckoned with. That's all I got.
That's good. Thanks, honey. Awesome job. So we have 4 minutes. If anybody has any questions, let me see about unmuting you guys.
They can unmute as they talk, actually.
Right. Did I do that?
Yeah, you said they can unmute themselves.
Allow participants to unmute themselves.
Yep.
Okay. So they're all saying thank you. Can you do it more often than once a year?
Where's that at? I haven't even read it. Oh, hey, listen.
From Mary.
I love to talk. I always get on here. Y'all know that.
So if anybody has any questions, you can unmute, you can ask, or you can type them out, or we can stop the recording, whatever.
I used to say that if there were no questions, that I didn't do my job. Because that means
somebody better ask
that means
a question.
I only told you what you already knew, right? That's usually what that means. If nobody asks a question, it usually meant that I just told you what you already knew.
I'm going to ask a question.
Okay, that's the other side of it, Aaron. Shh.
Somebody's
Can you guys hear me?
Let me turn the volume up here. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So if we are trying to coach someone who there's a misalignment in their motivation, and we've discovered that it's their let me go back to my notes. I wrote some notes down. If we discover that it may be their value of this opportunity and what they really have, but it's motivation. What are like a few quick things that we can do to help them dig a little deeper? Like what questions are to the point, but they're going to get them to kind of uncover
Sure.
that why a little easier?
So I always take them back to the beginning, because when motivation fails, it's ultimately a failure of passion. I mean, honestly, so all these things we talked about with expectancy and values, they really get back to the heart of why somebody's doing something, right? The passion behind the why. Why is very cliche. I hear it used over and over, and it's actually taken on a kind of a negative connotation with people now. I ask them to get back to, why are you doing this? And then you dig until you find that passion, kind of what I alluded to, Callie, in the instruction tonight. But, you want to ask them questions, and you don't want, when you're a kid, anybody who has kids know that kids never stop with just one why. They keep on asking why until they either get to the answer they want, or they realize that that's as far as mom and dad are going with this whole conversation. But they're going to keep asking why until they get to that point. We should be no different as leaders. Somewhere along the way, we stop asking why enough times, and we fall short of helping people really get to where they need to get in this business and in any business as a leader. So what we want to do is we want to start asking that question. Hey, I noticed that you're having a hard time right now, and you're really frustrated. And so I want to just kind of take it back to the beginning. Why is this important to you? What about this opportunity is important to you? And they're going to give you something very simplified at that point. I wanted to bring Jim home. I wanted, the extra money so that we had money for Christmas, or we could go buy organic food, or whatever it is. Like, they're going to have something very superficial. And don't get me wrong, it's important, but it's not enough. Those are the byproducts of what truly is driving them. And if we stop right there, that's not going to be enough to propel them when it comes time. It's just not. Because they're going to see other opportunities, and they're going to think, well, maybe that's the one that's going to bring Jim home. Maybe that's the one that's going to give us the extra spending money. We got to dig deeper than that. Well, what's that going to do for you? What does Jim coming home do for you? Well, when Jim comes home, he gets to be a part of our kids' lives, and we can actually be a partnership here in raising our children and spending time together and building our marriage back up again, because it's really suffered when he's taken on 3 jobs now, and you start to get to that. What's going to happen is you're going to listen as a leader for the change in the tone, pitch of their voice. It's going to go as they talk. You're going to start to hear that tone and pitch change. You're going to hear emotion start to come out. It's natural. We're opening up. And so when they say, well, the last 10 years, I feel like we're just coming and going. Yeah, we're husband and wife in the sense that we have a piece of paper that says we're married, but not really a couple anymore. We're just coming and going. We're just trying to make ends meet, and we don't see each other anymore. Well, what is this opportunity? How's that going to fix that? Well, with that extra money, then Jim can quit that 3rd shift job, and he's going to be home in the evenings, and we can read to the kids, and we can do these things. And all of a sudden, the emotion is going to come out. It is not uncommon for folks to break down at this point, to shed tears, to be raw. And as a leader, I know it's tough, but that's where you want them. Because at that point, what you've done is you've realigned what this opportunity does for them, and you've connected it with an emotional response in their brain. And we are driven by emotion. Sorry to say it. We like to believe we're driven by logic, but logic will run out. Emotion will drive us beyond logic. Okay? Sometimes in a bad way, but in this case, a good way. So we want to get that emotional response so that we can tie it back to that and help them drive through whatever obstacles in front of them. Because their logical brain's telling them, retreat. Retreat. This isn't for you. We got to get over that logical brain and get to the emotional brain, because the emotional brain says, but we need it. We need it. So hopefully that answered your question, Callie.
So you want to be on the phone so that you can, or in person.
Hey, listen, I'm going to tell you, if you can't be in person, you should be doing what we're doing right now. Yeah. Because you also, so communication, right? Voice tone of their, the tone, pitch of their voice is important. But when you can watch facial expressions, the body and facial expressions will tell you more about somebody when you're moving them in the right direction or the wrong direction. So as a coach, I always like to try to be able to see who I'm talking to as much as possible. And in today's technology age, there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, some of those questions that you always talked about that we actually talked about in John Maxwell book club and the 25 ways.
Yep.
What do you dream about? What do you cry about? What do you sing about? Yep. And then there was another one that I don't remember.
Yeah, those are good questions to ask. But again, those are starter questions. You have to dig deep, and not in an invasive way, right? You can't do this if you haven't built influence with them. Plain and simple. If you haven't talked to them in 3 months and then you want to engage them and you want to try to dig deep, good luck, because they're going to have a very, very thick brick wall built up that you're going to have to try to break through. And that's going to be hard. You have to build that relationship regularly so that when that change happens, they're willing to let you navigate for them because they can't navigate on their own. It's like they're throwing their hands up saying, hey, I need you to take this train and drive it for me because I'm lost right now. You can't do that if you haven't built influence with them.
Yeah. Gotta have influence for sure.
So.
All right. So the next call we do, Matt, need to talk about influence.
Oh, influence. You guys are getting me with all the good subjects.
Okay. Well, that was an awesome question. Thank you, Callie.
Thanks, Callie. Now I can go to bed comfortably tonight knowing that I did my job.
Somebody asked him a question. Thanks, you guys. I know it's 4 minutes after and we're missing team call tonight right now, but anybody else have any further things that they want to ask or say? Now's your time. Otherwise, we are going to jump off of here.
Yep. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you tonight.
All right. Bye.